and welcome to the New World Review. I'm Grand Line Waifu, and I have grave concerns about how well any of these plans are gonna go, but let's not worry about that. Instead, we'll get right into it because I have a lot of thoughts to offload. Let's go! Episode 106, and things are drawing in as we had a bushy corporate boy sneaking into the home bug base. He played a strong game at first, getting into the building and laying all those exits. It was frankly artful. I mean, it was artful because it's anime, but it was also artful how he did it without looking behind him. Like, how do you not? Okay, look, I have a problem with people not looking behind them when they're trying to do something and they don't want to be seen. He did the sneaky sneak thing, dirty from being covered in bush. And looking back, I feel like the bushy infiltration was the first step in the downhill slide of Knov, and I should have taken the simplicity of his perceived plan as a sign that he could end up where he was by the end. Leaving trails in the dirt, managing to get onto the premises without anyone around because there are no guards. The only way he managed to achieve anything at all was because the ants didn't care. They don't think he's worth the energy and time of protecting against, or I guess the kid in the throne room is more interesting, important, and dangerous than anything at all outside. After actively mocking the children for running away, Knov alone does the same. Like he says, he's not even actively touched by it, just sensing the strength of the guard. He runs. And you know what? He is kind of cool because that use of his Nen ability to just dimensionally shift ahead, I guess, that's pretty cool, but he knows that he's just not a match for them. How are they going to take down whoever their guard is supposed to be if Knov is crying in a bush outside the palace? And how is that going to work? Like, you know what? Just rather than me speculating for the next 5 minutes, let's go back and look at some of the concepts of this episode because it was frankly beautiful despite Knov. Knov got inside the grounds and sat beneath a tree, a beautiful white peepal tree, and the image of him looking up will stick with me for a while. Because at that moment, the enormity of what the ants have done, what they've been doing, and the plan they're going to carry out hit me. Really hit me. There's not been a point thus far where more than a handful of people have even tried to disobey the ants. If humans have proven anything to them, it's that actually they'll walk into their doom quite happily if they're told to. I don't know if it was a direct call to the song, but in the translation, Knov referred to a strange fruit. There is a hauntingly beautiful song, famously sung by Billie Holiday, called Strange Fruit, that is essentially about people who have been lynched. And again, I'm not sure if it is a direct call, but oh boy, is it relevant in reverse. Those who did what they were told became that fruit, while those who stepped out of line or out of the norm were safe. And there are all sorts of ties my brain wants to make to the cultural implications of this and what the storyline overall shows when it talks about the definition of socially acceptable behaviors in different spaces that make it easier for some to be manipulated or for others to stand out or just to put everyone in so much more danger than should be possible. And I got all of that from a single image of a man sitting beneath a tree of strange fruit, while he considered how much worse it could be if they'd done nothing. And while contemplating how many had already been saved, he sets an exit, and I wondered for the first time, what happens to Nen when the Nen wielder dies? I assume it fades away, but does it? So few Nen wielders have died, so I don't remember really thinking about it before. In any case, the idea of an exit suggests hope that things will go the way they plan, and before we got into the building and Knov became hopeless or hope lacking, I guess, there was a true belief that the strange fruit here had given their lives for a cause they didn't know about. They were the sacrifice necessary to stop the ants, or the sacrifice necessary to help the ants take over the world. I'm actually not sure which. But here's the thing though. If the ants take over the world, they would eventually farm humans, wouldn't they? They need a source of food after all, so they would farm special humans, I imagine. And while I internally cringe at that idea, I internally cringe not because of the farming, but at the implied loss of freedom, right? Technically, every country farms their people. People are encouraged to have children and to do very specific things in rearing them and engage a culture to rear them as desired based on that country's cultural perspective. What's the difference if it's ants? Because really, they're smart enough not to overfarm. They're smart enough not to just kill every last source of food. That doesn't make sense. What's the difference ultimately between the guy who was running the country and Meruem? He's explicitly doing what was implicitly being done, and he hasn't halted people like Bezov, but he also didn't put Bezov in place to begin with. And speaking of Bezov, I actively cringed at everything to do with that character. And that's interesting too, right? I actively have a problem with his behavior because it's nothing to do with survival and everything to do with just being a really gross, awful person. If anything, he's the most disgusting creature I've seen on this show, and that's probably because I've met and seen and interacted with people like him. He's relatably awful. I have a response to him, a deep, gut response to him unlike any other, and I'm going to stop before we get any further because hopefully Palm can deal with him once she's done her job. And I hope she can do her job because it seems like Knov actively cares about her, which isn't something I thought was real. I thought Palm loved him from afar, but actually it maybe returned? I'm not quite sure what to do with that information, but he was reading The Secret Garden a little while ago, and the amusement I now get from the thought that maybe reading that book gave him the idea to sneak in as a bush with tree pockets is just as good as the potential that he was reading it because, I don't know, he and Palm share a book club or something. Or maybe he thinks she's unwell and he wants to find a way to free her from it through the magic of stories. I'm not sure, but now I'm wondering, so I'll continue to ponder that while I despair at Morel thinking he's trapped Lionel Richie and his ability copying Nen powers. The level of hubris in the idea that he's essentially contemplating playing with his opponent before killing him is just absurd, and I really don't expect it to go well, so let's move on to episode 107 and see just how not well it goes. Episode 107, and Morel didn't throw the fight, but it says a lot that he knew the person who owned the ability Lael used. It means not only that his friend is still alive, but that his friend made some kind of deal with the lion ant creature thing? Chimera ant. Hey, I wonder if that will come back to bite them in the butt. Maybe not, probably not, because it's the sort of thing Togashi would leave open-ended, but then again, maybe. The fight between Morel and Lael was quite a beautiful one, with a really nice range of textures and colors, and I love the idea of the surfboard. And I'm not gonna lie, actually, really not gonna lie, a texture I felt was missing was like, a wet shirt. Morel was underwater for most of this fight, but his pressed shirt stayed pressed. I mean, I know it's fiction. I truly do. But there's not enough starch in the world for that. Also, I feel like that Yahoo from Lael once he was on that surfboard was so well earned that maybe he deserved to have that power more than the guy it was taken from. I could well have believed that that particular power was actually his because from beginning to end, he's had surfer energy. So I would not have been surprised to find that it was his naturally. I understand the need for combat to be broken up, but I'm constantly baffled by the idea that people find time and energy to big talk mid-fight. The whole, I learned 3 things from you. 1, I know what you can do. 2, your earphones are for show, luck, or orders. And 3, your lifespan. It just dropped. Like this mic. Morel then took things up a notch, confused the hell out of Leo, who then died. We lost Lael, who has been with us for quite some time, talking a really big game. It took me a moment to try to decide how I feel about him dying, and the answer is actually, yeah, I did feel bad. I didn't cry, but it was kind of sad to see him die, and he made a good point about the fact that his incapacitation of Morel's friend was him defending himself. His death took so long that we had the time to engage with his final thoughts, and really it gave us the chance to see that what he cared about was how impressive the power Morel used was and how much he wished he had it. The king of the jungle, Savannah, king of the savannah, let's be honest, Savannah, king of the savannah's last thoughts were about how he'd been defeated. Not pity, not remorse, or wishing he'd done something different, just an observation. He didn't even consider that he was dying beyond the vague thought that it was happening, which is very similar to Killua. In fact, we're seeing a lot of almost death and death thoughts coming up, and it makes me wonder what Kite's last thoughts were before his, I'll say, first death. And as we discuss death, we move to Palm, who encountered 2 kinds of energy. The first that was at distant, the other that found her, and seeing that she's not in the end credits, I think that's the end of Palm. We know that Knov is out. Palm was standing right next to one of the exits, right next to it, right on it. She was probably touching that exit. Maybe she got away. I feel of all the characters, she drew the true short straw, needing to get to a point where she could see the king and failing that to kill herself rather than let them get hold of her. And yet, even if she manages to, that's not a problem for Pito, but they don't know that. So she went through the entire situation of dealing with Bizov, then got out, went to do what she needed to do, and it's looking like the only ones who can get close to dealing with any of this are Gon and Killua. Possibly not even Killua. Not properly, though maybe he can now. He was compromised the last time. I hope Palm survives, but I doubt it, and that's sad. And so we get to Killua, who is back with Octobuddy. And so we reached the point at which I did actually cry. This whole episode kind of set me up really nicely for it. Octobuddy's clothes are adorable, but that wasn't what made me cry. What made me cry was Killua's growth and understanding of friendship and how it's supposed to work. And the fact that now he has his own character to look up to him. Both kids have found new friends on the other side of the combat line, and there's a distinct sense of hope from the younger ones that we couldn't have from the older characters. That the older characters have shown such distinct distinct and obvious hubris, while the younger characters are just passionate about fixing the situation is possibly the only way they might win. With 3 days left until the fight, whatever fight that is, with 3 days left until the plan, there's a lot of things that seem to have changed, and none of these characters are indispensable. Killua knows this, and he explained it to Octobuddy, who is so happy he could die. Oh, Octobuddy, please. I'm worried, because Octobuddy is deifying Killua in a way that I'm not sure is healthy, but none of this is healthy. Where did Killua learn this stance? Anyway, as someone who had never had friends before Gon, did it come from Gon, or is it his own thinking that's led here? Either way, the growth is stupendous, and the combination of that and the desperation Octobuddy had to experience, that's what made me cry, honestly. There are going to be more deaths. There is going to be an endpoint, and artistically, it's interesting that Killua was framed by the same golden light that he saw a few episodes ago, a light that surrounded Netero even earlier. And it's a great metaphor for death, life, strength, as well as intense danger, and I'm here for it. But I'm also not here for it because that's it from me. If you enjoyed this mind wander through metaphor, click here, here, and here. Check out this probably thing, like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.